Hello everyone. Today's bell ringer is a spell check. You're going to unscramble the letters to find your vocabulary terms. Put this in your binder when you're done. You have 7 minutes, but before you begin, read this cute little meme. Alrighty, you should have finished that up by now. We have 2 objectives for today. First, you will read and annotate a poetry piece for a text feature of which you will create a visual next class period, as well as to answer a complex question requiring text evidence with your group members, aka a hot question. You will then review a nonfiction text feature, watch a video with background information on a modern-day genocide, and read and annotate a nonfiction article for your group's nonfiction text feature focus in order to answer a hot question and create a visual next class period. So basically, what we did with a spring morning, you're now going to do with a poetry piece and a nonfiction piece. Both the visual and the hot question. But today, you're only going to work on those hot questions. Just a reminder, we will have our Kahoot vocabulary quiz on Thursday. First thing, when you walk in, you'll do your bell ringer and then straight to the quiz. So bring your electronic devices and make sure you study. We'll also begin our Hog Time tutoring tomorrow. That is Wednesday. If your name is on this list, you will report here at 2 o'clock. Please go get the pass from the pouch at the back of the room on the board, the one that says Hog Time Tutoring Passes. It is for a grade, so you must attend. I'll be focusing on the reading TSI, so if your name is on this list, that means you haven't passed the reading section of the TSI yet. You're not being punished. This is to help you pass it. What I'm going to do is I'll tutor this group for about 2 weeks, and then I'll give them a pass to go test, and then I'll pick up another 20 kids to tutor, and then tutor them for 2 weeks, and then they get a pass to test, and so on and so forth until everybody has passed the reading TSI. I'll explain more about this on Wednesday, but if your name is on that list, you must come to my class at 2 o'clock. It is for a grade. Since you've already had practice with completing a hot question, you're just going to watch this video all the way through. It's very quick and fast. It'll only be a couple minutes long. And then complete the hot questions for both the poetry and the nonfiction pieces. Make sure to turn in both before the end of the class period. Both hot questions. Everything else goes in your binder. Now, before reading either the poetry piece or the nonfiction piece, you want to review the text feature pages. So you're going to go ahead and open up your binder, and you're going to look for the hot pink papers that says poetry text features, and you're going to look for the purple page that says nonfiction text features. Those are the features you're going to do a visual on next class period. So just kind of look through them with your group now so that you're familiar with them while you're reading. Okay, materials manager, this is your job. You're going to go to the board and you're going to pick up a graphic organizer for each person in the group. So start with the one farthest to the left, and you're going to get 4 if your group has 4 people in it. It's got 5 people, you need 5, so on and so forth. You're also going to pick up a poem, just 1 poem per group. There's about 10 different poems in there, so just pick one of them. And you're going to get a copy of the Poetry Hot Questions. Okay? You just need one of those as well. You're also going to pick up the nonfiction article titled Opinion, Rwanda is Reborn Following Genocide Past, and a copy of those hot questions. You're going to get 2 of the reading selection and 1 of the hot questions. So you should get a graphic organizer for each person in the group. You should get 1 poem. You should get 1 set of poetry hot questions. You should get 2 of the articles and 1 copy of those hot questions. You're going to have to pass the poem around and let everybody in the group read it. That should be easy because they're fairly short. None of them are longer than a page. For the nonfiction article, you're going to have to pair read. So there's 4 of you in the group, so you're sitting next to each other, so you read it at the same time and you can discuss it. That's kind of how that's going to go, because I can't make a million copies of them, so we kind of have to share those. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and grab those things and bring them back to your group. I'll keep the directions up on the board so you can kind of see how many you need of each, but it's also written above the pouches. Alright, since you're not reading for fun, you're reading to answer questions, you want to look at the hot questions first. You can start with the poetry, you can start with the nonfiction, it's kind of up to you, whichever your group feels like they want to start with. But look at the hot questions and kind of decide which one you think you might be leaning towards answering. Then you're going to read the selection. Make sure you do both before the end of the period, the poem and the nonfiction. For the hot question, fill out the graphic organizer first and then use it to create your complete answer. One of the things I can tell you about the ones you did last time, most of them were really, really good and I was super impressed, but there were a couple where the text evidence was just thrown in there. You can't just throw text evidence in the middle of the paragraph without introducing it. So you should start off with something like the author states or the speaker asserts. For poetry, it's going to be the speaker or the author. Speaker is only for poetry. So for the nonfiction text, I should not see the speaker says or whatever, because there's no speaker. There's an author, and there's not really a narrator for nonfiction either. You're probably going to stick with the author. for a nonfiction piece. You can also kind of change that up a bit. Like for the spring morning one, a lot of people were writing, the author states, da, 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 when they could have said, Aaron says, da, 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 in the text evidence. That works just as well. But you can't have the text evidence by itself. It has to be introduced with a phrase. So keep that in mind. That was something I noticed on your spring morning hot questions. You were just throwing them in there. You can't just throw the quote in there. You gotta have it start with an introductory phrase. Your complete answer will be on the line paper, just like with other hot questions. So it's one giant page. The poems are all about the Holocaust. So that kind of you should have some background knowledge from the summer reading and from a spring morning to kind of draw from for those. The nonfiction piece is more current. It's a current genocide or not current, but a rather recent genocide that occurred that you should know about. Just in case you don't, I'm going to show you a video in a little bit that kind of talks about the background so that you kind of know before reading the article where Rwanda is and what the main issue was and what ended up happening there. Alright, so this video will give you a little bit of background knowledge on the conflict in Rwanda so you can understand the article better. The article is an opinion piece, so it is a persuasive text, just like your essay that you're going to have to be writing next week, which I'm sure you're really excited about, finally writing your first essay. Yay! We are going to use it to go back and discuss ethos, pathos, and logos. So you don't want to lose it. You want to make sure you put the article in your binder, your 2 copies for your group in your binder so you can use it next week. But I just want to give you a heads up. I mean, it says it in the title, but it is a persuasive text. The author is trying to convince you of something.
Okay, 100 years of Rwandan history in 3.5 minutes. Let's see how we go. Before the Europeans came, people knew where they stood. The elites were the Tutsi and the peasant masses were the Hutu. Rwanda was ruled by a king, and he was a Tutsi. Tutsis loved their cows with their beautiful long horns, but the Hutu farmers thought the cows were a nuisance, always trampling their crops. In the 19th century, the Europeans divided Africa up and colonised a bit each. Germany got Rwanda, but after the First World War, the other countries told the Germans that they couldn't play with their African toys anymore, and gave Rwanda to the Belgians. The Belgians found the Tutsi easier to get along with, more like themselves in fact. So in 1933 they introduced ethnic identity cards and made sure most of the jobs and education went to the Tutsis. After 25 years of being exploited by everybody, the Hutus decided that since they were 85% of the population, democracy, or something like it, sounded pretty good. The Belgians saw the writing on the wall and promptly switched sides and started supporting the Hutus. This was a surprise to everybody, and things got a little crazy. Hutus started using their newfound power to squash the Tutsis, and then a couple of years later, in 1962, Rwanda got its independence from Belgium. But it was more like a bloodbath than a democratic revolution. And for the next 35 years, Rwanda and its neighbours got caught in a cycle of killings and revenge. Hundreds of thousands of people became unwelcome refugees in surrounding countries. Many Tutsis fled north into Uganda, which was like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire because Uganda had its own murdering dictators. So for decades, those unhappy Tutsis dreamed of going home to Rwanda. Meanwhile, south of Rwanda, in a little country called Burundi, the Tutsis were still in power and murdering the Burundi Hutus. So the Hutu refugees from Burundi fled into the south of Rwanda, determined that they would never let Tutsis treat them like that again. Yes, it's getting complicated, isn't it? The Hutus in Rwanda didn't know what to think. On one hand, they'd overthrown their Tutsi masters and got power for the first time, but on the other hand, there were plenty of Tutsis left, and one day they might come looking for revenge. The Hutus were very afraid, and some of them decided that if things ever got ugly again, they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Next time, they'd wipe the Tutsis out completely. Meanwhile, huge amounts of foreign aid money was ending up in bank accounts of corrupt Rwandan government ministers. But life wasn't getting any better for ordinary Rwandans. In 1989, world coffee prices collapsed and hundreds of thousands of Rwandan farmers lost their incomes. In 1990, many of the children of the Tutsi refugees in Uganda decided it was time to come back to Rwanda and sort things out. Their rebel army, the RPF, marched out of the Ugandan bush to make war on the Hutu Rwandan army. The Hutu government of Rwanda saw a way out. They got on the radios, they made speeches. The Tutsis are coming, those snakes and cockroaches will murder your children, they'll take away your land and they'll turn you into slaves. A few other countries tried to get the two sides talking, but it was no use. The leaders weren't about to give up their power, they kept stirring the crazy pot until Hutus were nearly out of their minds with fear. On the 6th of April 1994, the Rwandan president's plane was shot down, and the message went out. Those Tutsis have killed the president. It's time to get to work. Kill them all.
And just so you can have a little bit of laugh before you start actually making your brain hurt, here's a little Calvin and Hobbes. And here's a funny meme. It's okay if you laugh. Laughter is good for you. Alright, now that you got a little bit of background information on that nonfiction piece, you're ready to get to work. Remember to put everything in your binder except the hot questions. The hot questions, the final draft of those you need to turn into the substitute so I can check them. They're very... Alright, now get to work. Remember, if you need to review the videos, they are online on our class website. If you need copies of the papers, they are online on the class website. If you have a question, email me. I will get back to you ASAP, usually within the hour. I have my phone sitting on the table next to me, and if it goes off, I can usually answer it right away.